Have you ever felt someone slowly pulling away from you? The calls grow fewer, the messages shorter, and the gaze that once felt familiar now lives only in your memory. You don't know what you did wrong, but something clearly shifted. It feels like abandonment, like betrayal, and it stings. But what if that silence isn't rejection, but protection? What if their leaving isn't a loss, but heaven's intervention? There are moments in life when you begin to sense a shift. The people once close to you start fading into the background. Calls become rare, conversations feel forced. Their presence feels more like a memory than something real. And before you can even ask what happened, they've already distanced themselves. It feels like rejection. It feels like betrayal. But I want to tell you something today. Not every silence is rejection. Sometimes it's God's protection. What feels like someone walking away may actually be heaven stepping in and quietly removing them from your path. We often pray for peace without realizing that God sometimes answers that prayer by removing the noise. And people, yes, even people can be noise. They can be distractions. They can delay your purpose, disguised as loyalty. When they leave, the pain can scream louder than your calling. But don't forget, God knows how to protect His own. And if that means letting certain people fade from your life, He'll do it quietly, without warning, and sometimes without giving you the closure you thought you needed. Because the truth is, if you had the closure, you might go running back. And God loves you too much to let you return to what He's already freed you from. We often confuse consistency with loyalty. Just because someone was with you yesterday doesn't mean they're meant to walk with you tomorrow. Their presence may have only been for a season, short assignment. And when that season ends, God doesn't consult your feelings. He fulfills His plan. That's hard to accept, I know, especially when you love them, especially when you invested in them. But not all investments bring returns. Some become life lessons. And one of the hardest lessons you'll ever learn is that absence can be an act of mercy. When someone chooses to ignore you, it doesn't always mean you did something wrong. It doesn't always mean you weren't enough. In fact, it often means you were growing and they weren't. And when your growth begins to challenge their comfort, they retreat. They won't always say why. They'll just start pulling back. But instead of taking it personally, you must learn to view it through the lens of eternity. God is answering a prayer you didn't even know you prayed. He's separating you for something higher, holier, and heavier. The enemy wants you to believe that their distance defines your worth, that their silence confirms your worst fears, that you're not worthy of love, attention, or loyalty. But that's a lie. You are not abandoned, you are being positioned. You are not ignored, you are being protected. Some people were only ever meant to teach you what not to become, who not to depend on, and how to stand tall when there's no one clapping for you. Their exit is not your end entrance, your entrance into a wiser, stronger, more spiritually grounded version of yourself. Maybe today, you're sitting in the middle of that silence. You keep checking your phone, wondering what went wrong, replaying conversations, analyzing your every move, blaming yourself for their absence. But take a deep breath. Hear me clearly. You are not the problem. You are not the villain in everyone's story. You are not too much or too little. You are simply too called for them to walk beside you in this season. Sometimes, the silence isn't because they stopped caring. It's because they never cared deeply enough. And in His mercy, God let it show before you gave away more of your soul than you should have. Sometimes God allows the ignoring to happen so that your heart won't turn people into idols, people who were never meant to be your foundation. You can't build destiny on unstable relationships. You can't run with vision while dragging dead weight. So God removes them quietly, painfully, purposefully. What you do in that moment changes everything. You can mourn their absence or embrace His guidance. You can demand answers, or trust that silence is an answer in itself. You don't need closure when God has already opened a new door. You don't need their explanation when you already have His confirmation. You don't need to fix what God has already finished. Let the silence be your sanctuary. Let their absence become your altar. Let the quiet be the classroom where your faith learns to stand on its own. Because if they chose distance, then God chose direction, and you are headed somewhere their feet were never meant to follow. And right now, maybe something inside you is still struggling with the distance. You feel that pull to close the gap, to chase, to fix, to explain. But before you give in to that urge, pause. Ask yourself, is it really rejection? Or is it redirection? Remember what we said earlier? When people choose distance, God chooses direction. Now, we continue not by chasing after them, but by walking forward with faith as our light. You were sent into the world to be a light, not a follower of shadows. You were never created to make people love you. You were created to love God, to hear His voice, and to remain faithful to the path He designed for you. And if that means walking alone for a season, so be it. If that means being misunderstood, so be it. If that means silence from the ones you thought would always be there, then let it be. Because the moment you begin chasing people, you lose sight of your assignment. And when your eyes are no longer fixed on your purpose, your spirit grows restless. Your mind becomes clouded. Your heart begins to ache and purpose starts leaking out of your life, drop by drop. You need to understand this truth. Not everyone can hear what God whispered into your soul. Not everyone saw the vision He planted deep within you, and that's okay. You were never meant to explain your calling to people who don't have the spiritual ears to receive it. Some things are just between you and God. And when people walk away from what they can't understand, don't take it personally. They're not always rejecting you. They're reacting to a glory they don't yet have the maturity to honor. Your destiny is far too valuable to place in the hands of inconsistent people. Your future cannot afford to be tied to those who only show up when it's easy. And your peace must never be held hostage by the emotional availability of others. God is calling you to stand, to walk, to build, and to do all of it without needing a crowd. You just need courage. So when they pull away, don't chase them. Let them go. Bless them. Release them. And keep walking. Because every step you take in obedience brings you closer to the promises of God. Every step taken in purpose makes space for the right people to enter your life. People who see your value without needing to be convinced. People who won't flee when things get tough. People who are sent, not attached. You weren't made to follow people. You were made to follow Christ. And His path won't always be popular. It won't always feel full. But it will always lead to life, to joy, to healing, and to truth. So lift your head, wipe your tears. Stop chasing what no longer chases you. Walk in purpose, like heaven is backing your every step, because it is. There's a truth that can set your heart free if you're ready to receive it. When people ignore you, they're often saying more than words ever could. You don't always need a conversation to understand someone's heart. You don't always need an explanation to see their intentions. Silence is a language all its own, and if you've ever been on the receiving end of it, you know just how loud it can be. It doesn't scream with sound, it screams with absence. It speaks the truth that someone may not have had the courage, the love, or the character to say out loud. And in that silence, something inside you shifts. Maybe you begin to question yourself. You retrace your steps, your conversations, searching for the moment when things fell apart, when the affection faded and the distance began. But the truth is, people often pull away not because you failed, but because they've already made a choice, and their silence is simply the echo of that decision. You see, when someone truly values you, they make it known. They don't leave you guessing. They don't place you in a position where you're begging for presence or clarity. They show up not perfectly, but consistently. When that stops, when they fade behind vague excuses and unread messages, understand this. Something in them has already turned away. Maybe they won't say it. Maybe they'll still smile at you while disconnecting behind the scenes. But their absence is speaking the truth their lips refuse to. Facing that kind of truth is hard, especially when your heart wants to believe the best in people. But discernment demands more than emotion. It demands that you let the facts speak. And the fact is, if someone can ignore your pain, your effort, your presence, then they were never truly invested in your soul. Because love doesn't ignore. Love doesn't go silent when things get uncomfortable. Love leans in, not out. Some people are skilled at pretending. They know all the right words but lack the depth to live them. They may have called you a friend. They may have promised loyalty. But when the storms hit, when life gets real, that's when the truth surfaces. Silence becomes their testimony. And sometimes, the greatest clarity you'll ever receive doesn't come through words, it comes through withdrawal. But don't let that break your spirit. Let it build your wisdom. Because every time someone distances themselves, you're gaining insight. You're learning who's seasonal and who's steadfast. You're learning who's drawn to your light and who was just drawn to your energy. And when you stop chasing answers and start observing with clarity, you begin to see the truth. Those who ignore you might never tell you why. Maybe they envy your growth. Maybe your peace makes them uneasy. Maybe your presence reminds them of their compromise. Or maybe they were never really for you in the first place. And God in His mercies, there's silence to expose what their smiles tried to hide. Don't be afraid of that exposure. Don't run from what it reveals. Because when you allow truth to rise even through silence, you free yourself from fantasy. You stop expecting loyalty from people who only showed up out of convenience. You stop mistaking proximity for intimacy. And you begin to guard your heart not with bitterness, but with wisdom. This is how God protects His children. Not always with thunder or lightning sometimes, just with the quiet departure of those who were never meant to stay. That silence, that's God clearing confusion. That absence, that's God creating space for someone better. And in that space, He begins to heal you, to renew your strength, to remind you that your worth is not defined by who ignores you, but by the one who never leaves. Let their silence be your clarity. Let their distance be your direction. Let their withdrawal teach you that peace isn't found in being surrounded by many, but in being anchored in truth. Because those who are truly for you won't keep you guessing. They won't make you beg for presents. They'll show up. They'll stand firm. And they'll walk with you through both valleys and victories. So if today you find yourself echoing in the silence someone left behind, if you're wondering what you did wrong or why they drifted away, breathe. You didn't lose something precious. You were spared from something that couldn't go where God is taking you. And that is exactly where we'll go next. So what happens when the silence stays and the ones you trusted never come back? Sometimes it looks like silence from someone you thought would be there forever. And you find yourself whispering, why did they walk away? Why did they stop talking to me? Why am I suddenly alone, especially when I needed them the most? But I want to tell you something that might not fully make sense right now. God separates to elevate. You see, we often pray for growth, for clarity, for strength, and for purpose. And we expect those prayers to be answered with open doors, with wave after wave of blessings, friend after friend cheering us forward. But that's not always how God moves. More often than not, His first move is subtraction. It's not about who walks in. It's about who walks out. And when God begins shifting your life, He often starts by removing certain people. Not because they're bad, not because you failed, but because they simply cannot carry the weight of where you're going. I know that's hard to accept because we grow attached. We build memories. We build dreams with people in mind. We start imagining a future where they're right there beside us. But when their time and your story is up, God doesn't stop to consult your emotions. He moves. And sometimes, that movement looks like distance. Sometimes, it arrives in the form of silence. But don't be deceived, God is working. What feels like rejection is really redirection. What looks like abandonment is actually divine alignment. It hurts because you thought they were part of your future. But God saw their heart. He saw their intentions. He saw the moments you missed when they went quiet, when they didn't stand up for you, when their loyalty started to fade long before you noticed. And God loves you too much to let you build a life on unstable ground. He knows the calling on your life. He knows the weight it carries. He knows the battle it will attract. And He knows the strength it will require. Not everyone can handle where He's taking you. So He removes them not to punish you, but to protect you. You might cry. You might miss them. You might replay moments wondering if you could have done something differently. But hear this, God never wastes pain. If He allowed them to walk away, if He allowed the door to close, it's because He's preparing an opening, a greater one, that your eyes haven't yet seen. You're still focused on who left, but heaven is already preparing for who's coming. Sometimes, elevation requires isolation. You cannot rise while dragging what was only meant to walk. You cannot go deeper in your purpose while clinging to those who only knew the surface of your identity. And the higher God takes you, the smaller your circle may become. But that's not loss. That's refinement. That's not punishment. That's progress. Even Jesus, during His final hours, was surrounded by fewer and fewer people. Even He had to walk alone toward the cross. Not everyone could handle the weight of His purpose, and not everyone can handle yours. So don't let the silence fool you into thinking you've stepped off course. You may be more on track now than ever before. The pain of separation is temporary, but the lessons it brings, eternal. One day, you'll look back and thank God for who He removed when He did. Because if they had stayed, they would have limited what He wanted to do through you. They would have distracted you. They would have discouraged you. They would have kept your focus on comfort when God was calling you to purpose. So when people distance themselves and ignore, you take a breath. Don't chase. Don't question your worth. Don't shrink in shame or guilt. Instead, lean into trust. Trust that your steps are ordered. Trust that your path is known. Trust that even in the silence, even in the solitude, God is still in control. And if He's allowing you to be alone for a time, it's because He's about to whisper something you can only hear without the noise of others in the room. Elevation never feels good at first. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. But later, you'll see its purpose. And you'll realize it was absolutely necessary. Every goodbye, every unanswered call, every distance, it was all part of your preparation. Because what God is about to do in your life will require you to stand tall, walk boldly, and carry a peace that doesn't depend on who stays or who leaves. Let them walk. Let them go. You keep following God. He knows exactly what He's doing. There will come a moment, maybe today, when you realize not every battle is yours to fight. Not every silence is yours to fill. Not every absence is yours to explain. And one of the most powerful things you can do when people distance themselves is to not take it personally. Don't take it personal, take it spiritual. Because the truth is, you're not wrestling with people. You're wrestling with a season that might be uncomfortable. A season where people you thought would stand beside you quietly fade. A season where conversations dry up, where invitations stop, and you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? But it's not about you. It's not even about them. It's about something deeper, something eternal, something sacred. God is doing something in the unseen. What looks like disconnection in the natural is actually alignment in the spiritual. When God begins to move, He doesn't always move loudly. He often moves in silence, in stillness. He allows relationships to fade. He lets doors close. And if you're not careful, you'll misinterpret the shift. You'll think you failed. You'll think you weren't enough. You'll think you're being punished. But don't let the enemy twist your vision. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. God has a way of shifting the atmosphere around you. When He's about to shift the assignment within you, and people can sense it, even if they don't understand it. Your peace will make some people uncomfortable. Your growth will confront those content with stagnation. Your hunger for purpose will unsettle those chasing popularity. And instead of leaning in, they'll back away. They'll become distant, quiet, absent. And in your flesh, you'll want to chase, to question, to fix something God already closed. But don't take it personal, take it spiritual. Ask the Lord, what are you trying to show me? What are you preparing me for? What are you separating me from? Because if you let your emotions drive you now, you'll run back to what God is rescuing you from. You'll reattach what heaven has already cut loose, and you'll delay your own deliverance. Spiritual maturity means you bless people as they leave. You release without bitterness. You trust that if God lets someone walk out, it wasn't to break you, it was to make room. God's removals are always intentional. He clears space so your roots grow deeper, so your spirit becomes stronger, so your ears tune more to His whisper and less to the noise of others. Because when there are too many voices, it's hard to hear the still, small voice of the Spirit. Sometimes the very ones who once spoke into your life become the noise drowning out God's direction. So He quiets them not to hurt you, but to help you. He moves them not to isolate you, but to lead you. He silences the familiar so He can speak the eternal. It's not personnel, it's spiritual. It's not rejection, it's redirection. And the sooner you embrace that, the faster you'll heal. Because you were never meant to live dependent on human validation. You weren't called to draw strength from popularity or proximity. You were made to draw from the living well, to be anchored in the one who never leaves, the one who never distances himself, the one who never ignores, the one who never walks away. So stop chasing what's walking away. Stop forcing what God is already fixing. Stop replaying old conversations trying to find where it went wrong. Because sometimes it didn't go wrong. It just reached its God-ordained ending. A chapter closed, not in chaos, but in quiet, because heaven turned the page before you did. And I know that's not easy. It's human to want closure, to want reasons, to want peace through explanation. But sometimes, the most powerful peace doesn't come from knowing why. It comes from trusting who. You see, God doesn't always give us the details. He doesn't always provide the why before the what's next. But He does promise this: He never leaves. Even when others walk away, even when the room goes silent, even when the people you trusted the most fade into absence, God remains. He is steady. He is faithful. He is unshaken by the departures that shake you. And here's the truth you've got to hold on to. You are not behind. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are simply being positioned, shifted, prepared. That silence you're sitting in, it's sacred. That loneliness you feel, it's the soil of transformation. Because some things can only grow in solitude. Some clarity can only come when the noise has faded. Some strength can only be built when you stop reaching outward and start reaching upward. So don't resent the silence. Reverence it. Don't fear the absence. Honor it. Because God is still speaking, just in a different tone now. A quieter one. A deeper one. A voice that cuts through confusion and breathes purpose into pain. And when you stop chasing what left, you'll finally have the space to receive what's coming. No more running after people who make you question your worth. No more replaying moments hoping to rewrite what God already finished. No more tying your identity to the attention span of others. This is your turning point. This is where healing begins. This is where peace takes root, not from what was lost, but from what God is restoring. Let them walk away. Let them grow silent. Let them close the door. Because your value doesn't live in their presence. It lives in your purpose. And if their silence made space for your calling to grow louder, then it was never a loss. It was a setup. So today, stand tall in the quiet. Stand steady in the unknown. And remind yourself, God is still here. And He's not finished. This is the end of the video, but it might be the beginning of your healing. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to pause for a moment. Reflect, then share it, because someone else might be sitting in the same silence, waiting to hear this too. And remember, you don't need their voice when you have God's whisper. You don't need their hand when heaven is holding yours. Keep walking. You're not alone. You're just being prepared for something greater than you imagined. Don't forget to subscribe to Divine Strength Daily so you won't miss the next message, because every video here is a reminder you are not alone.